Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. I wanted to go ahead and introduce, this is Sunnita Blount. She'll be going over the NIL 101. Thank you again, technology issues. I just wanted to go over a couple things really quickly. If you wish to activate live captioning, if you just select show captions, and if you want to see the full transcript of everything, you'll select the tick mark on the side and click on the show hide captions, and then you can view that full transcript during the presentation. What we're going to do for questions is we'll wait till the very end, and then questions will be filled that way. If you have any questions, just again, wait till that end. And don't forget, at the very end, right before you leave, we will have the QR code to do an evaluation of this session. So if you could just take a minute at the very end and make sure that you do that. But I will go ahead and head it over to Miss Sunnita Blount to go over NIL 101.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am so happy that you are able to join me today. And like my host said, Carly, we are going to be talking about NIL and the ins and outs and how you can successfully assist your athlete if they have any questions about NIL, since it's such a new topic. So the first thing I'm going to do is give a little bit more information about myself. Like she said, my name is Sunnita Blount, and I am an attorney. I am from Chicago, Illinois. I reside in Atlanta, Georgia. My practice focuses on sports, business, and entertainment. I am also someone who uses my practice to ensure that I am able to help and give back to the community by being a volunteer lawyer at Georgia Lawyers for the Arts and ABLF and other pro bono organizations in the city. Also, I'm a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I'm on the board for the Atlanta chapter for the National Association of Black Female Executives in Music and Entertainment. I'm the Assistant VC of Events for Women in Music Atlanta. I'm in Black Sports Professionals Atlanta. I'm a Beasla YLD member, public speaker, and I own a lifestyle blog, Melanin Overload and City Brunch Girls. Lastly, to show you the essentials of NIL, I've received an esports law and management certificate from SULC. I'm a Forbes Black certificate member. I graduated from the eCornell's Women's Entrepreneurship Program. I have a certificate from the SULC Sports Agent Bootcamp, and I have an NIL certification from Front Office Sports and the Grady Sports Agency. So that's a little bit about myself. So I know we're running a little bit behind, so I'm going to get right into the presentation. First is, what is NIL? So many of you might have heard of NIL, especially since this focus is for those who are in the sports profession at the universities. But for those who haven't, NIL stands for name, image, and likeness, and it stems from tort law, the right of publicity of tort law, and in some states it falls under the right of privacy. The right of publicity prevents unauthorized commercial use of an individual's name, likeness, or other recognizable aspects of their persona. Unfair competition is also often used when we're talking about a person's name or likeness when it's misappropriated. So for example, if someone was to take an image of you and use it without your permission, they are misappropriating your image or your likeness for commercial gain, meaning they're trying to make money off of your image or likeness, and that is illegal. And there are certain rules in every one state that they have to have followed in order to use your image. Everyone has
a legal... Sunnita, sorry to interrupt. Can you share your screen really quickly to where you can go to the next slide?
Oh, okay. It's not.
For some reason it didn't go to your next slide. It just has your introduction up.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know that.
Yeah, no problem.
Is it there? Can everyone see the...
No, it's still your other slide.
So it doesn't say...
I'm not seeing any slide. I'm just seeing about to share screen.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's the problem then. Oh, it says it's paused. Why did it... How about now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I was like, it was paused. Sorry, everyone. So to continue, in the past, NIL was not a source of income from college athletes, but now it is with the new regulations from the NCAA. And so our next slide. Today, we're going to talk about the important factors regarding NIL and how you will be able to discuss this with your student athlete. So the factors we're going to go over today are policy, compliance, collectives, student employment status, profiting from NIL, and the importance of having an attorney when doing NIL deals. So first, we're going to start with the NCAA policy. So an intercollegiate athlete attending a post-secondary education institution can be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. That's essentially what the NCAA policy has done. And as late as August 1st, 2023, the rules for NCAA NIL is voluntary registration, which means that you can voluntarily register to process NIL and become a service provider, meaning an agent, financial advisor, attorney, etc., to serve as a source for providers interested in working with student athletes. Disclosure requirements. Student athletes will be required to disclose to their school, and we're going to talk about that more when we get to the employment status for students. Information related to NIL agreements exceeding $600 in value, no later than 30 days after entering into or signing their NIL agreement. Standardized contracts. NCAA will work with schools to provide student athletes with robust education on contractual obligations, including developing a template contract and recommended contract terms to ensure student athletes and their families make informed decisions about NIL agreements. And lastly, comprehensive NIL education, which is something like this. The NCAA will develop a comprehensive plan to provide ongoing education and resources to support student athletes. And these rules were put into place. Again, NIL is very new. So these rules were put into place because it kind of, to give an analogy, was becoming like the Wild Wild West, where students were entering into things because they now knew they could, but they still were not doing them correctly, or they didn't have the proper education, them or their family members. And that can become an issue because that could affect them actually being eligible for professional play, or it can affect them as far as like their financial aid and things like that, because as you see, you have to disclose your income, and that can be an issue when it comes to getting FAFSA. Since this is LSU, we're going to talk about Louisiana law. So Louisiana law, LASB 250, which went into effect June 10th, 2022, says that rules can include the following: the same, an intercollegiate athlete attending a post-secondary education institution can be compensated for their NIL. Compensation must equate to the market value of their name, image, and likeness. An officer, director, employee, or agent of a post-secondary institute, including the institution as a whole, cannot compensate the athlete for their name, image, or likeness. And we're going to get more into that when we talk about collectives. A person representing an intercollegiate athlete must be registered with or licensed within the state. Attorneys representing an intercollegiate athlete must be licensed to practice law. That rule is focused more so on attorneys and agents or athlete agents, and that every state has their own rule when it comes to who can represent students when it comes to NIL deals. That's specific to Louisiana. So now we're going to talk about a little bit about compliance, which is the biggest issue, as I stated before, that athletes are having when it comes to NIL. So you have to remain compliant with your school and or state policies. Like I said before, if you don't, you can really, really, really harm yourself and make yourself ineligible for professional play if that's something that you're seeking after college. So you are prohibited from compensation related to pay for play, impermissible offers, and inducements or extra benefits. This means no quid pro quo, which is compensation for work not performed. No compensation is contingent on initial or continued enrollment at a school. That's becoming an issue too, as you guys know, with the transfer portal and things like that, because students are being enticed to go to certain schools because they're looking at the NIL deals, which some schools have deals with Ford, some people have deals with Mercedes-Benz, or they have deals with certain. There are students that are living in like $1 million condos. So that's becoming a big issue too, like I said, with students and NIL deals and them actually going to school. So that's a very important compliance rule. Is that no compensation is contingent on initial or continued enrollment at a school. Recruits cannot be paid to attend an institution. No compensation that is contingent on an athlete's performance or achievement. An athlete's NIL value might be enhanced by performance, but an athlete cannot have any financial incentive based on points scored. So basically, you can't say, oh, if, example, Roger scores 35 points at this game, he'll get a higher NIL deal with Powerade. College athletes cannot receive benefits that are inconsistent with institutional policies, because although we have state rules, each institution can also insert their own policies for their students, and LSU does have a fact page, a FAQ page that lets you know, and it's basically contingent with what it's basically in comparison with what I just said, as far as what athletes can and cannot do when it comes to NIL. For example, athletes cannot wear an athletic brand on the field that does not represent the financial deal an institution has with another athletic apparel company. So you can't wear Adidas and LSU has a deal with Nike. And this is a big one and a really, really, really important one. Depending on the school they attend, college athletes cannot endorse alcohol, tobacco, or gambling products. They are also prohibited from using school logos in paid opportunities or signing deals that conflict with the school sponsorship agreements. This prohibited activity varies by state. So that means that you cannot have on an LSU jersey or any type of logo without permission from LSU, or without permission from LSU, because it can cause you, again, to have an issue with the school and have an issue with your athletic department, because you're now using that school's logo, and I'm positive LSU has that logo trademark, copyrighted, and you have to license that from them. And also they have their own sponsorship deals, so you cannot use their logo to make it seem as though LSU is promoting Powerade if that's not one of the sponsors that they have an agreement with. Collectives. So this is another controversial topic when it comes to NIL. It's collectives. So in its simplest forms, an NIL collective is a program designed to facilitate athletes' potential endorsement opportunities. The NIL collective is not exclusive to just college student athletes. It is open to any athlete who falls under NCAA bylaws. Each school can have its own NIL collective, or there may be several within one conference, according to iconsource.com. As such, collectives frequently collaborate with regional or global businesses to offer chances to athletes, which may have a collective liable as a joint employer, which again differentiates the students and has the students and the collective having to enter into an employment agreement. And every state, again, has their own laws when it comes to employment. And then also the students have to, again, ensure that they're following the policy of the NCAA when it comes to employment as well, and for their FAFSA, as I stated before. As of 2023, more than 120 known collectives have formed or are currently in the process of being formed. These numbers are not as small as you think they are. 92% of Power 5 schools now have at least one collective or are in the process of forming one. In case you were wondering, that means every school in the SEC has at least one organization that is a collective. So I want to talk a little bit about the different collectives. The first we're going to discuss is marketplace collectives. A marketplace collective is when an organization sets out to create a meeting place for athletes and business to connect and create opportunities. So therefore, we have some such as Marketplace Florida, Division Street, Happy Valley Talent, and Tiger Impact. So what happens is they set up a website and they take donations, or they partner with certain brands, and there is a one-stop shop basically for athletes to then go on there and figure out or try to connect with certain brands and also get certain deals that they might not get on their own. Donor-driven collectives. These collectives are pulling together booster and supporter funds and creating opportunities for athletes to give the money back to the athletes. This is the most common setup. They basically wash the donor money, paying these NCAA players in a compliant manner. So each group has its own money collection format, with some opting for a subscription model, while others welcome one-time payments. Certain examples for these are the Wildcats Den, the Foundations of Fun, the Grow Collectives, Inspire Sports Group, dual collectives. So these collectives are basically a marketplace and a donor collective in one. While the NCAA has yet to make a major move against the collective, many industry sources say that donor-driven collectives will be made an example of. So next, we're going to talk about the concerns with collectives. Issues with collectives stem from the fact that they're very controversial, specifically, as I stated before, when it comes to pay to play and recruiting in the transfer portal. The biggest storyline came in a report in March from the Athletics Stewart Mandel, which outlined that a 5-star recruit in the class of 2023 signed an agreement with the school's NIL collective that could pay him more than $8 million by the end of his junior year of college. This recruit is widely believed to be Tennessee 5-star quarterback commit Nico Lamalevea. I might not have pronounced that right. So this is a major problem when it comes to athletic directors because they've expressed concern that collectives are using NIL payments as a pay-to-play and recruitment inducement both for high school prospects and the transfer portal. So the NCAA has now released updated guidelines on NIL in early May 2020. It says collectives are not to be involved in the recruiting process or in the transfer portal. There continues to be growing concern over the role of the collective, and the NCAA guidance has not slowed down any organizations. When it comes to specific guidance for departments at schools, these are the most important policies you should remember. An NIL agreement between a college athlete and a collective triggered booster status may not be guaranteed or contingent upon enrollment at an institution. As you can see, the theme of this is pay to play and students being induced to go to certain schools because of NIL deals. Next, the contracts must be based on an independent case-by-case analysis of the value each athlete brings to the NIL agreement. This is opposed to providing compensation or incentives for transfer decisions, athletic performance, achievement, or membership on a team. So those are very short, but the list for actual athletes is a little bit longer, and it makes sense because they're the ones that have the most harm in this situation. Recruiting conversations between a collective that has triggered booster status and a recruit are not permissible. A collective that has triggered booster status may not communicate with the recruit. So it's the same as it was before. You cannot try to induce a recruit to come to your school by giving them a certain incentive for a Powerade deal or a Ford truck deal. An NIL agreement between a recruiting collective may not be guaranteed again on enrollment status. And lastly, coaches and staff may not organize, facilitate, or arrange a meeting between a collective and a recruit. This means that they cannot give a collective a watch list of athletes. They cannot participate or induce anyone in the NCAA transfer portal. And coaches are also directly prohibited from communicating with recruits on behalf of collectives. And they're also they're not permitted to communicate with recruits' families. Anybody that's associated with the recruit's family, agent of the recruit, or anybody that's in association with the recruit. Student employment. An NIL athlete is considered an independent contractor, and it must be reported with FAFSA. An NIL athlete is considered self-employed for tax reasons. Non-cash compensations must be reported, and there must be a determined value for the items of the taxes. So I tell a lot of my athletes that although Fashion Nova might have sent you a box of clothes, or you might have got a free meal at a steakhouse, or you to endorse that steakhouse, or you might have gotten a deal with Wingstop, and it just includes you eating Wingstop on your social media. You still have to report that. So however much the wings cost that they sent you, or however much the clothes that Fashion Nova sent you, you have to still report that because it's still taxable. So this is the biggest part, is how do athletes profit from NIL? Why was it so important for athletes to be able to profit from their NIL? So athletes can use their NIL for social media, like we've been talking about, sponsorships, advertisement, autograph sales, YouTube channels, private training lessons, merchandise, endorsement deals, public speaking, NFTs, public appearances, camps, clinics, and it would behoove them to connect with the brand expert. But this generation already is really well versed in social media. So a lot of the athletes have already been able to build their brand because they're already on there posting their stats, they're posting their games, they're posting how they train, and they're already having brands look at them and offer them certain things for promoting, whether they're a football player and it's a certain cleat, or whether they have a certain type of fashion or style. But I always tell the athletes, make sure you endorse something that you believe in, and make sure you endorse something that you actually like. What are the hobbies that you like to do outside of playing sports? So the best way to do that is for them to ensure that personal information is in their bio. Like I said, uploading pictures of their interests. Pick a theme for your brand. Colors should be primary to either your school or to some type of color scheme that you prefer, so that everything can flow and focus and people know whom they're looking at when they look at your brand. All their social media profiles should be aligned with their brand, and they should always, like I said before, keep track of their sales figures on websites or get on IG business or Facebook business, and engage with the audience. The engagement is what brands are really looking for when you're trying to get into NIL or get a good NIL deal. And I tell people, it's not always about you being at a bigger school. Yes, the bigger schools are well known. Those are the students that are getting like the major deals. But as a student athlete, if you are very active on social media and you use your brand to your benefit, you can also get NIL deals, even if they're not as prominent as someone at a bigger school. So this is where I come in. The importance of attorney representation. Assisting with negotiating NIL agreements. Again, students in the generation today that is affected by the NIL, they're very good at, using their name and their social media to ensure that they are able to attract an audience and attract certain brands. However, it would be great if they consulted with an attorney, because you can maybe secure more money than if you just spoke with the brand yourself, because obviously the brand is going to offer you, let's say, $600 a post. But if you get with an attorney, you might can get more than that, because an attorney can look at your brand, assist you with it, or connect you with a brand expert that can leverage what you're doing and get you more than the $600 that they're offering. We can also determine the proper length of the contract and ensure that it conforms with state laws and NCAA guidelines. Drafting and revising licensing. So a licensing agreement is what gives a licensee permission to reproduce and use a licensor's intellectual property, NIL in this case. I tell my NIL clients and my regular clients, make sure that you are not giving someone a blanket use of your NIL, because when you do that, you're actually losing out, and you're losing out on money. So it is very important that you have someone look that part over, because if not, you can give them the use in perpetuity, and that means that they can continue using you on their website or on their social media page, and you're not even getting paid for it. So that's as a legal contract, this type of formal agreement should be set forth in detail in the terms of property usage. And we also, again, like I said, help athletes remain compliant with school and or state policies. Lastly, before we get to questions, the takeaways are: keep abreast of the NCAA and your state's policies. Be compliant with NCAA rules. NCAA, keep in mind the protect the concerted activities. Ensure NIL deals are based on fair market value. Be sure the athlete, athletic department, or collective is not violating any prohibited conduct. And as I said before, consult an attorney for any questions or concerns. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, I am here to answer them.
Okay, as of right now, it doesn't look like, oh, someone might have a question, but I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so that you can fill the evaluation out. So again, if you have any questions, you can ask right now, Thank you again, Sunnita, but make sure you fill out this evaluation for her and for our support summit. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly so that y'all can get the evaluation slide. All right, can y'all see it? Hopefully, if you
I
can
can
see
see
it.
it. I can see it, so.
Perfect. Okay, great. Make sure that you do the QR code. And if you have any questions, put it in the chat.
So I am not a tax lawyer, but just to give you a little bit more insight, the tax implications come in because as stated, if something is worth $600 or more, you have to report that. That's why I was telling you guys that even though you might not get actual money from a deal, you have to report the value of that deal because that implication needs to be reported because you are technically an independent contractor, which puts you in employment status. And this can affect your FAFSA as well because some people's FAFSA, obviously, we all been to school, our FAFSA most of the time is based off our parents. So if we're now working and we're making a certain amount of money, you have to report that to the IRS. And that could change your FAFSA status. So that can affect your grants, your loans. It can affect a lot of things. So that is something that you should really, really, really pay attention to when you're signing NIL deals or when you're filling out your FAFSA for the school year. Oh, that's a good question. I came across a contract where the brand, it was like a makeup brand. Basically, my client would get paid an example of, let's say, $5,000 to do a get ready with me with a makeup brand. So when you have the contracts, they normally are detailed where they say the influencer, athlete, influencer, whomever, will do a get ready with me post. It's either live or sometimes you can record it and you have to keep the post up there for a certain amount of time. Sometimes you have to add it to your story for a certain amount of time. Sometimes you have to do a reel and you have to repost it. They have different variations in all the contracts. However, in this particular contract, my client would only be paid for posting the reel, but the brand can then use the reel whenever they want. So let's say the reel came out today and the brand posted it tomorrow. Normally the brand has like a certain amount of time, maybe 30 days, within the 30-day limit, and that's it. They can't post anymore. This brand actually wanted to be able to post my client's reel continuously. So you have to think about that. If this is a major makeup brand, they're getting tons of engagement. So they're getting tons of views, and these transform into money. So my client, though, is only gonna get the flat rate that they paid them of the $5,000 and nothing else. So the biggest red flag is to always look for how they're using your NIL and make sure that they only have a limited license to use your NIL. And the next biggest red flag is to look for how long they can use whatever you're promoting. So your video, your repost, etc. So you need to pay very, very close attention to those two things: the licensing part and the usage.
Hey, Sunnita.
Yes.
Thank you for this very succinct presentation. I've said to several NIL presentations, and yours has been spot on point. I have a question. I'm not certain if this is because this is my first time hearing the word collective or the process collective, and I'm not certain if this scenario is an example of a collective, but I've seen an occasion where an athletic program pitches one, I guess, a group representative for their team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an NIL, and the disclosing form stated that it's not an NIL. However, they are inclined to, I guess, push one entity over another. Is that permissible?
When you say push one entity, are you talking about
a marketing group, perhaps, that would
so
help?
So that's where that comes in. So some, like we said, some schools have collectives, and the collectives are like formed by alumni and things like that. So some schools do have that. And again, that's where I was saying it's becoming really murky waters with ECAA and trying to regulate these things, because schools can, there's one school in particular that does have a marketing group that they are partnered with. And that marketing group has a LLC, and they then are the people that represent all the students if those students decide to have certain NIL deals that the collectives are already got. So that's why I'm saying, like, because NIL is so new and now the collective thing is really becoming popular, it's really murky when it comes to athletes and collectives, because what's happening is, if you're only going to use that collective, say for instance, my client wanted to do a deal with Ford, but the collective has already under their marketing group a deal with Lexus. It becomes, so now again, the athlete is the person being harmed, like they were before when they couldn't profit off NIL, because now you're forcing them to promote something they might not want to promote because they have decided to enter into a contract to go to this school and play for whatever team or sports at that school, and they have to now promote whatever that collective was saying, like you were saying. So that's again where the NCAA hasn't come down hard on collectives yet, but it is becoming a very controversial topic as far as boosting and things like that.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did.
Okay, hold on. I didn't see it. Let me go back to the chat. Hold on, I'm sorry. I can't. I'm trying to read the question.
I got you. It says, can you elaborate on boosting? What is that exactly?
Okay, so basically, a booster is someone that represents the interests of an institution's athletic department. So kind of like how I hope I pronounced this right, Lavanya was saying about being connected with one particular thing. So boosters play a role because they support the team and athletic department through donations, as I was saying before, when I was talking about the different collectives and financial resources. So they do things like they provide donations in order to obtain season tickets, or they participated in or have been a member of like the university athletic program. They've made financial contributions, things like that. So those are what they consider boosters. So someone that is basically contributing to a school's athletic department in some way financially. Which is why, again, though that's very murky when it comes to enticing students to come to a school, and they don't want those individuals or organizations to have any influence on a student when they're trying to decide what institution to go to, or even when they're already at an institution and they're trying to affect the student when it comes to them entering into the transfer portal.
So boosting is like to where boosters are looking to influence that student athlete in their decision. Is that what that is? When a booster is trying to have that relationship?
Well, no, no.
Okay, I'm just trying to get clear. I'm sorry.
Right, I was like, no.
Excellent presentation, by the way. I'm just.
Oh, thank you so
I've heard
much.
the term boosting, and I'm like, what does this mean?
So, okay, let me.
If I can go back to my illustration, Sonny, Ms. Blount, again, just to kind of extrapolate a little bit more.
I'm trying to see how to.
So in this particular program, the entire team was presented with one entity for guidance on their NIL. And in the appearance of it, it seemed as if it was generated because of some relationship with the university They were fans, they were alumni based. It was boosting, in essence, that because of that support, that, as Ms. Blount described as a collective, it was given to these students for their consideration. Again, none of them in the contract, it was well spelled out. It's not an NIL. However, because of that alumni base, that alumni support, that particular entity was allowed to come in and make presentation to this team and to serve as pretty much their agent, so to speak, in securing NIL, where they would be trained, taught branding strategies, learning the lingo, that kind of thing there, and guided through signing several NILs should they sign on with this one particular entity. Does that help, Ms. Blount?
Yeah, so that you're kind of more so talking about collectives. So a booster doesn't really have to be a collective per se. Boosters help collectives by donating money or
Right.
some type of, yeah, so your example is spot on, but it's like the boosters come in because they support the teams in athletics through some type of financial resource, whether it's actually giving money, buying season tickets, etc. But does that make sense, Jonathan?
Yes, ma'am. That makes sense with the boosters. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of where boosters come in.
So I don't want to gaslight on anyone. This is not a Louisiana school, but I'm just returning from an out-of-state recruiting visit, whereby, and this is going in line with your statement that collectives are not allowed, for to be used in recruiting. But there was one other state, and I know all states have different NIL laws and governance, but I was wondering if are there exceptions to that whereby, let's say, for example, housing is availed to first semester sign-ons for only the summer sessions? But then beyond
Okay, can you
that,
say that one more time?
okay, an institution has an NIL deal with a private housing partner, to whereby the cost of housing for the student can be significantly lowered. Rather than being the normal $395 a month, it's $50 a month because of the NIL deal.
You said this is at a particular school that you were just at?
Yes, not in Louisiana, okay?
But so they were basically using NIL to assist with housing.
Housing, correct.
That's interesting. I have not heard of that. So I would have to look more into that, especially not knowing which state it's in, which you don't have to tell me, but I can't really,
I thought it was interesting myself. That's why
that is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Again, it was the school with the NIL deal to provide housing for the students.
That's a new one. I have seen, but it wasn't the school. Like I stated in my presentation before, I have seen students who are living in lavish houses due to their NIL deals, but I'll really have to look into that as far as the school partnering with housing to reduce the amount that the student pays, because they will promote them through being a brand influencer through an NIL deal. That's interesting.
Right, they have to wear a t-shirt with the property.
Okay. Right. Huh. That's a new one. Yeah, I would have to really see what that state's rule is, and that's a new one. But again, all
I can share the state offline with you. I'll share the state offline.
Yeah, please do. I'm gonna put up my information at the end of the presentation. So how can we advise athletes on, let's see. How can we advise athletes on identifying the best counsel for them? Like what area, look, like what are some certifications, areas of expertise should their counsel have? Oh, okay, so I think at the beginning I told you about the certifications that I got from Front Sports and Grady Sports Agency. Also, you should be very versed on IP law. So if you're not, you should either take CLEs or do some type of extracurricular programming. They have a lot of like courses online. Some schools offer certain courses, or organizations like those Udemy and stuff like that. They offer courses too if you aren't really abreast with IP, because NIL really goes back to IP, like I said, with and tort law. So, and the problem is though, the tort law differs for each state. So, and each state also has their own rules when it comes to NIL. So although you might know, like me, I know exactly what NIL is. When I deal with students in different states, each state might have a different rule when it comes to representing them or things like that. So Katrina, you have your hand up?
Oh, yes. Great presentation, by the way. I just was going to kind of piggyback off of the question with the booster for Jonathan, just to clarify from maybe like a granular level for people who are not, I guess, well versed with law. And I was just going to explain, like, for example, my husband, he he played for a D1 school. And so I was just going to just kind of give you a little tidbit that, there was boosters all over the place when it came to his time at his school. And one of the boosters, for example, would invite a lot of the students over, cook for them, do all types of, just fun activities with these students, let them live there. And that's just like an example of what that particular booster was doing for some of the students. And, whether he paid for, just getting their haircuts, whatever they needed, that was kind of like, I don't want to call it a mentor because it wasn't, but it was more so just he's doing that because he's vested with the school. And so these players are coming in, they're winning and et cetera. And so that was like his role for these group of students. And I was just trying to just break it down a little bit more and when it came down to what a booster is or does. But I was just giving like a real life example of like what that booster was doing for my husband when he played football at a D1 school.
That's great. That's a great example. That's exactly what it is. Let me, because we're almost done, let me go to the slide. Carly, am I still sharing my screen? I want to put up
No,
my
but you
contact
can go
information.
ahead and just do share screen or new share,
Okay.
and then you'll be able to
It'll
share.
stop sharing yours. Okay.
Yep,
I
that's
just
fine.
wanted to put up my contacts.
I'll do stop share.
There is my contact information and my SCAME code. If you use LSU 2024, it's eligible for a free consult for you or an athlete you may know, or anyone else that may need assistance with any other legal issue under sports business and entertainment. And it is good until May 9th. And there's all of my contact information as far as my number, my email, and my website. I do see someone else has a question.